Hi everyone. In this video, we'll look at the Amazon caching services. So this would be the last video in the Learn AWS concepts in 10 days. So I have already taken the major concepts videos as you would find out in the playlist. I thought of taking this because this again is a very major feature, because a lot of times you want performance to be high or latency to be low, and caching is an important concept, as you would have realized. Generally speaking, when you think about optimization or high performance, low latency, fast loading, you always give a thought to caching. Okay, so this becomes a very important topic for us to cover. So let's go ahead, and what I have done is I am also comparing the different caching services. Majorly we will talk about DynamoDB caching, that is DAX Accelerator, ElastiCache, and Cloudflare. Okay, so let's start with Cloudflare. Again, the format will be the same. We only talk about the major key points, what use case a particular service is best for, what it is not ideal for. Okay, so this would be more of a theory session. We'll not look at anything practically, because I want to cover the concepts and at least mention the different caching services you have in AWS. Okay, that's the idea of this video. Don't think that it is a very it is just all theory. So because theory is also important, I want to cover only theory in this playlist. Okay, so coming back to Cloudflare, it's a global CDN, content delivery network. So if you have a static website like news websites or blogging websites, a lot of times these are more static websites, so they don't dynamically, the content doesn't change. If it's a blog, that remains a blog, right? I mean, you are not or the filtering with respect to different filters, or the call going to query or the database is less. Okay, so what you can do is that content, which is that blog or a news article, you can always cache that, because that is not changing. Okay, you can keep it somewhere close to you, and you need not store that as a blob in database. Okay, so you cache it nearby. So that is what happens with CDN. So you have these different edge locations. For example, if I am in India, there would be one edge location near India. Okay, so that if I am trying to open that website from India, the call doesn't go to the main server, which may be in the US. Okay, so that's how Cloudflare distributes its caching, and it helps in getting the data quickly, because the time it takes for the call to go, and then the call is anyway not going to the DB, it is going to your cache, so it's faster in that way. So that's the idea of Cloudflare. So caching at different edge locations, and making sure that globally, if users are using your application content base, which is more static, like a news website or a blogging website, then the content gets delivered via the caching, which is done near to the user. It is best for accelerating websites globally, as I mentioned. Protecting application from DDoS attacks. Okay, that is also internally, it helps you do that. As I mentioned, caching static content close to users, reducing origin server load. So your server, the actual persistent data may be in some other region which is very far from your place. Okay, so ultimately you would also persist the data somewhere in a database like a DynamoDB or RDS, whatever. Okay, because you don't want to lose the data, but at the same time that server may be miles away. So when that happens and you are going to the DB to fetch the data, then you cannot expect and with a huge number of users using the application, you cannot expect the content to get delivered to you faster. Okay, so that's why you have this concept of edge location based concept, and reducing the load on the original server. Okay, it is not ideal for hosting applications, okay, complex workflow orchestration. So it is more of a simpler workflows where you have this blog content, and you store it as a cache in various locations, and you have a mechanism such that the call doesn't go to the server every time. Okay, in one line, Cloudflare is more CDN, security CN, and a performance layer in front of your applications. Okay, ElastiCache. Now this one is a fully managed in-memory cache based on Redis and Memcached in-memory cache. Okay, which means the data is stored in RAM. Microsecond latency and very high throughput for read heavy workload. So since the call doesn't have to go to the DB, so that much time is saved. The content is fetched from the memory only, so that's why the latency is so low. Okay, it could be auto scaled, and it supports replication, multi availability zone, and automatic failover. All these features are available. As the name suggests, it obviously supports caching, session storage, leaderboards, pub/sub, rate limiting. All these different concepts are supported, and it reduces load on backend databases, I already mentioned, by frequently getting the data from the memory. Database query caching, this is what it is best for. It could be RDS based, DynamoDB Aurora. So you place it before the database, and you store the response which would have come from database into this cache in the memory only. Okay, that's the idea. So you place it in front of RDS so that the call doesn't go to the database every time. If the call request is same and you have the key available, which means it's the same request for which the cache is available in the memory, it will retrieve the response from the cache and not go to the database. Okay. It is again good for session management for applications, rate limiting encounters, real-time leaderboards, and gaming applications. Frequently access reference master data, reducing application latency from milliseconds to microseconds. Okay, so if you want to be real fast, then definitely go for ElastiCache, because getting the data from a cache is would be real quick, and then going to the database and then getting it from there. It's not ideal for primary transactional database. Like, you cannot say that let me use ElastiCache only for persistent data storage and I'll not use database at all, because latency is so fast. But it doesn't happen like that. So data durability is not its my primary purpose. So data can get lost anytime. Okay, so there is no guarantee. But in DBs you have data durability as a major feature. Okay, so if you have to persist data for long term, then obviously you have to store it in some database like Aurora, RDS, DynamoDB. These are the database storage engines. ElastiCache is just like a temporary storage, you can say. It is obviously not ideal for long-term data storage, and not ideal for applications where data loss cannot be tolerated. Okay, so sometimes the data loss can happen from the cache, and if it's a sensitive application where even minute data loss is a concern, then you don't use ElastiCache in that application. And if it's smaller and simpler applications where database performance is already sufficient, like lesser data, and going to the database every time doesn't harm you, then need not use ElastiCache anyway. So in one line, it's like a managed in-memory caching layer that sits between your application and your database to reduce the latency. That's what it is all about. Okay, moving to the third one, as I mentioned, it is DAX, DynamoDB Accelerator. It's a highly available in-memory cache used in DynamoDB. Now this is specifically for DynamoDB, built for DynamoDB. response time is microseconds for even millions of requests per second. So even if the throughput is higher, you are getting a lot of requests per second, then also that's the time when you have to go for DAX and not depend on only DynamoDB. So you want both low latency and you have higher throughput, which means or higher load, which means millions of requests per second, then go for DAX. When you create a DAX cluster, you can select the node type and number of nodes. That is one thing. For high availability, it is recommended at least 3 nodes distributed across AZs. Okay, so when you are creating this DAX cluster, you can select the node type and number of nodes. What we are recommending is for at least 3 nodes distributed across different availability zones, so that you can have fault isolation. DAX runs in VPC and is not publicly available. Okay. After creating a DAX cluster, point your existing DynamoDB call to DAX endpoint. So you have DAX endpoints being exposed, which you can try to call from your application, to basically have that mechanism for getting the data from DAX. You can have that logic when to go for the database and when the data should return from DAX, and so on and so forth. It is best for read intensive apps. So you have a lot of reads in your application, then this is the best, which requires response real quick, microseconds, to cache large data sets that are repeatedly read to save RCU as well. Now if you are returning a lot of large data sets from the DynamoDB and they are repeatedly read, so the response is the same, and this is happening a lot, then you should look for saving that data in DAX and getting the data from DAX to obviously avoid read capacity units. RCU is read capacity unit. So when you're reading from DynamoDB, you are charged. So why should you go for RCU in that case? Okay, why you should go for read from DynamoDB in that case, if repeatedly same data is getting fetched and it's a large data set. It is again not suited for apps that require strongly consistent reads. DAX only serves eventual consistent reads. Okay, so basically it's a asynchronous replication from DynamoDB to DAX. So it may take some time for the latest data to reflect in DAX. So if you are looking for applications which don't allow that, or which don't tolerate that small time gap where the data may be little stale in DAX, because it's an asynchronous replication and it takes some time for the data to get reflected, latest data to get reflected, then don't go for DAX. Okay, so because it allows only eventual consistent reads, which would be more asynchronous replication. With synchronous replication, you update in the database and you save in the cache at the same time in the same request. So that is synchronous. Okay, so that's the idea. It is again not suited for write heavy apps. So if an application is more inserting or updating the data, like form submissions and all that, then DAX is obviously not major use, right? Because when you think about it, it is about retrieving the data faster from the database. That's what we are after. Insert, we are not bothered. Okay, for such apps, DAX is not an ideal scenario. Okay, moving to the different comparison between the different caching layers we are having, or caching services we are having. Cloudflare is edge locations. It is inside VPC. ElastiCache is inside VPC. DAX is also inside VPC. It is best for content delivery, application data, DynamoDB related calls. Works for S3 application load balancer APIs. Okay, so you can have a Cloudflare in between these services, and this one works for RDS, DynamoDB, or Aurora. DAX is for DynamoDB only. Okay. So Cloudflare, does it require code change? No. ElastiCache, it requires some code change, and DAX, it doesn't require any code change um, uh, to basically implement it. Okay. With respect to global, Cloudflare and ElastiCache are global. DAX is not that global. Latency, Cloudflare is lowest, ElastiCache is low, and DAX would be really low, ultra low. Okay. So ElastiCache and between ElastiCache and Cloudflare would have lesser latency, and it also depends on what kind of content you're trying to retrieve. But generally speaking, latency wise, Cloudflare is lower than ElastiCache, but again, the three have different use cases. So you require Cloudflare for a different use case than ElastiCache. So comparing their latency actually doesn't make sense in that way, because the use cases are different. So we are not talking about apple to apple, we are talking about orange to apple comparison here. Okay. I would say that's it for this video. Hope you liked the series, and as I mentioned, we have a community for like-minded people, for people who are learning AWS. So look in the description, there is a link to register yourself if you are interested in being a part of a closed inner circle, where you get a lot of new updates, workshop related details. We will do a lot of workshops, especially on AWS. So go ahead and register yourself for the community, and I'll see you there. Thank you.